All right, we're recording.
Yay.
Work. Okay, well, welcome everybody to our Empowered Women's Call. It is, what is the date? It's the 1st of October. I should know that.
September 30th, where I am.
Right, okay. And you're in Canada right now.
It's starting to get really cold here, and it's just starting to get super hot over there.
Yeah, totally. Maybe I will come. Maybe I'll come and do some snow over there.
Yes.
So welcome everybody. I'm Kira. We have Dr. Nima on today, which we're always excited to welcome. Had so much incredible feedback from all of the calls that we've done up until now. So thank you again for your time. You're tuning in from Canada. Whereabouts in Canada?
I am in beautiful Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and this is paradise. I'm thinking of moving out here. If anybody over there down under has been up to Vancouver or Victoria, say hey.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. You only think that's paradise because you haven't. Have you been to the Gold Coast?
Oh, I have.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
a different type of paradise. It's a different type of paradise. Very different, but equally as good. My vision, my dream is to have a place in Gold Coast. I have a place in Vancouver and then one in Barcelona. That's my ultimate vision.
That sounds like perfection. Whenever anyone asks me where's my favorite place that I've traveled, Canada is easily, I don't even have to think twice. It's just breathtaking.
Really?
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Just the nature side of it. Beautiful.
Totally.
So today we are going to be talking about codependent relationships, signs that you might be in one, how to recover if you are, basically how to not F up your relationships or, more importantly, your own happiness. Now, I don't think that I've been in a codependent relationship, but what I can resonate with, which I feel is part of the topic, is relying on somebody else for your own happiness, rather than being able to fulfill that for yourself. So I'm sure that will come up in this. But I saw an epic post this morning, and I just want to quickly read it because I feel like this is what we're working towards, and the sum of having a beautiful, conscious, connected relationship with.
That's what we want. That's really the ultimate goal. Exactly.
100%. So number one, a human being's role is to not complete another. Right? So your partner's job is not to complete you. You need to be complete and whole within yourself. Number two, demands and expectations lead to resentment. Number three, your emotional and spiritual health reflects daily on your partner. And I would add to this, your kids, your friends, your family, everybody around you, right? That's a big one. And we've spoken a lot on that. So any mamas on here, especially if your emotional state is constantly in chaos, you need to go watch the other calls that we've done together, because that is affecting everybody around you and determining the emotional state in your entire household.
And you're wanting everybody else to solve it for you.
Yes.
And you're not trigger proof. So that's really what it's all about.
100%. Number four, communication problems are often unhealed trauma. Oh, I can relate to that one. Hey, Nima.
100%. That's why every time a client comes to me, we don't, and like my husband this or my wife this, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Let's put her or him aside. And let's go deal with the real thing that's going on. And it's
all of the coaching I've done with Nima is like, oh no, we're going to look at you.
We're not talking about him today. We're talking about
brutal.
He's got nothing to do with this. Let's talk about the real thing.
Number five, a partner who keeps promises to themselves keeps promises to another. A partner who betrays themselves betrays another. That was a big standout for me as well. And the happiest partnerships are two people living as their authentic selves, even if that means temporary discomfort along the journey. And lastly, the foundation of love is freedom, respect, and commitment to highest self.
Totally. You're talking about conscious relationships, right? And everybody wants that, right? And I want to start off with you maybe writing this down if you're taking notes, because this is really about what we really want out of this. This is everybody we all get into relationships because most of the time it's unconscious why we do. It's because we think that this other person completes us, as we say. But I want to redefine relationship as a healthy space for us to grow and heal and create a safe space to evolve and grow together. The purpose of relationship is to create a safe space to evolve and grow together. Let me say that again. The purpose of relationship is to create a safe space to evolve, grow, and heal. Because let's face it, when you got into your relationships, your nervous systems have been stained with all sorts of trauma. If you're grown up in the Western world, and trauma doesn't necessarily have to be something violent that's happened to you. It can be a separation trauma, or you saw your parents separate and you turned around and made it mean something about you. So the whole purpose of this relationship is to evolve and heal and grow together. But unfortunately, if you're like most of us, like me, like most of us, a breakdown in the relationship forces us to wake up and look at a few things. And when we have unhealed wounds and unhealed trauma, we will grow up and we will create an environment or a relationship where we then are either in the narcissist or the codependent type of dynamic. So most relationships have a little bit of codependency, but depending on your spectrum, it can be in a space where you've either completely lost, where you have lost yourself in caring and tending to the needs of another person who has a mental illness, mental problem with addiction.
Or even just kids, mothers who have children.
Exactly. You can be completely codependent on a child or a problem child or that kind of thing. You can be the helper there. Or you can be on the other end of the spectrum where your wounds had you in a specific time or place where you dissociated from yourself. So you have this paralyzing need to get a self-identity through other people. So you then become the narcissist in the relationship dynamic where you are now needing other people to validate you. So you're either the narcissist or the codependent when you've fallen into unconscious patterns. And what we want to do is to share a few signs and symptoms for you to look for so that you can then wake up. Because this is what because I literally have gone through this process. I've been on both sides. And by the way, I want you to really be careful of labeling people. Because if you label them a narcissist, you have to really understand we all have both sides to us. So you could be the codependent in one relationship dynamic while simultaneously being the narcissist in another. So when you're pointing fingers saying that person is that, be careful because there's three fingers pointing at you and nobody's a label and we all have both sides within us. So it's healthy because you'll notice you'll be the narcissist in one and the codependent, needy, anxious, attached in the other. So it's important to know. So the purpose of today's call is to kind of help you identify some of these patterns because most of them come unconscious until you kind of hit your head over the wall and go, what the heck? Like, what the heck? I am not fulfilled. I am unhealthy. My health has gone to crap. I'm starting to develop all sorts of addictions, all sorts of health problems. This is what I noticed in my chiropractic practice. If you haven't met me before, I ran a chiropractic practice for 18 years, helping people with health-related problems that were I started to see patterns that were totally intermingled with relationship dynamics that were unconscious. So it's wise for you to know we're all to go from that unconscious codependency towards a place where you have mutuality, where both parties are conscious and working towards helping each other, set boundaries and meet each other's needs and co-regulate with mutuality. That's really it, is that the relationship can be a place where we heal together and co-regulate each other's nervous systems rather than set each other off and then kind of fall into these.
I've come to believe that is actually that's what the purpose of relationships. When you become conscious, you realize is they're there to help you evolve. And even though my previous relationship ended, the evolution that has come from that, huge. Moving forward is incredible and will continue to be so. I have no doubt.
This is almost our 1-year anniversary of meeting.
It really
literally.
It
literally is our 1-year anniversary of meeting.
Yeah.
And look at the fucking evolution
Oh my
that
God,
you
I'm gonna
are like,
cry.
I know, it's our 1-year anniversary,
Yeah, I
right?
feel like a different person. Someone
Because
asked me today, they said, you just look so different and, what's your secret? And I said, like my program, my healthy eating and being happy. It's just like.
well, yeah, getting to that level of self-love, really,
Yeah,
that's
it
the
really
answer.
is.
And
Yeah.
in that, you'll have happy days, sad days, but it
Oh,
doesn't matter
there's
because
lots of bad days. Don't worry,
yeah,
everyone.
exactly,
Yeah.
totally. So here's a few things that you want to look at within your relationship. This is totally not in your situation, but you want to look at codependency comes from the word used to be called co-alcoholic. In the kind of the way that there was always an alcoholic came in a entangled dynamic with another person in a relationship where they were kind of enabling. So they were enabling that sick, stressed, depressed, anxious, an addict to kind of enable their behavior and constantly saying they should change, they should change. I hear this all the time. Can you help my husband? He's got PTSD and all these addictions and all this stuff. And I'm like, and why? And I'm thinking to myself, why would he want any help from me? He's getting it all from you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So the only way that he's going to, or that person is going to seek that help is when they start to see the constraints of their life and they have no choice but to then rescue themselves. Ultimately, that's the answer. But here's a few things, a few signs that you want to look for. And the first thing you want to look for is this idea, this codependent, where a few signs you want to look for is the first sign is that you believe that someone can change for you or you can change for someone else. They'll change. I'm helping them. I'm hoping that they're going to change for me, right? Or I can change for them. That belief is an unconscious red flag that you are possibly living in a codependent dynamic, that you are not living in mutuality, that you aren't working towards co-regulating, that you're kind of feeding the monster. So they will change for me or I will change for them is the first one. Okay. Second one you want to look at is that you believe unconsciously or consciously. And now some of you might listen and go, this sounds kind of stupid, but this exists and you never know. You wouldn't believe how many times I see this is the unconscious belief that my partner is there to provide me with happiness. They're supposed to make me happy. Because we all know what happens when we put all of our self-worth, our inner state, our emotional regulation on somebody else. Nothing that they do will ever be enough.
And I would say I'd be willing to bet a very high percentage of women do this because I don't know many women in the scale of women that I know who truly are happy within themselves. And I think the challenge, obviously it's bad if it's happening either way, but I think because the masculine energy is so set on wanting to please the feminine and make the woman happy, when we place that expectation on a man, it puts tremendous pressure on a relationship. And I think what you hear is often when relationships end or if men leave, it's because they could just never make that person happy. And really it's because they're not.
I can't win. The I can't win feeling. Yeah. Which then, by the way, comes from their wounding because they weren't able to make their mom happy, which they transferred onto the partner, and that's their part of it. Mm-hmm. But that's your entangled dynamic there. That's really important for you to look at. Most of this is unconscious. Remember, the answer to all of this is conscious awareness. Mm-hmm. And consciousness requires a willingness to look at yourself and call out your ego, which 90% of people that I've worked with when they start it's too painful to do. They don't want to look. So that's why in our trainings, in our weekend workshops, you literally see the end of your ego. You literally learn from Friday to Sunday how to transcend the ego. It's really cool. So the third one that you want, by the way, I have an online workshop before anybody leaves in the next 15 minutes. I'm going to put a link up for an online workshop happening Saturday morning for you Aussies. Where I'm going to show you the ins and outs. It's 2 to 3 hours long, where we're going to go into the ins and outs of becoming trigger-proof to this. Okay? So number 3, here's a dead ringer. that you're codependent. You feel anxious or paranoid or fearful when you're separated from that person. This could be a kid. This could be your partner. This could be somebody you work with, a friend. There's codependencies with friendships, right? But if you feel anxious, fearful, paranoid when they're not around or when you're separated from them, you might be a codependent. It's like Jeff Foxworthy's "You might be a redneck." You might be a codependent, right? So that's another one. That's the third one. The fourth one that you want to look at is you're the two types of people. You either jump from relationship to relationship because you can't be alone, which was me. This is how I healed from my codependency. Was I was like, I'm going to go 1 year and not be in any relationships. I'm going to be alone. I'm going to do the most terrifying thing, which is actually not have validation of my existence from another person outside of me. Terrifying at first. And then I was like, damn, I love this. And the second was
there's
when
so
I was
many
like,
gifts in it, huh?
totally.
Yeah.
The second that I was like, damn, this is amazing. I'm winning at life. I don't need that validation. All of a sudden, the right person just shows up. And now I'm in probably one of the most conscious relationships that I've ever been in my life. And it's all, I'm just telling you as somebody who's been making some discoveries on my recovery as well. That's my commitment, is I teach what I most need to learn. So if you're either jumping from relationship to relationship like I was, you're codependent, or you're so terrified of them that you avoid them altogether. And the reason why you avoid them altogether is because you have a tendency to completely lose yourself in them. Mm-hmm. Soon as you become attached, you're like, if you have these symptoms, I'm totally fine on my own. I'm amazing. I'm a boss babe at work. But the second I get in a relationship, I lose my mind and I lose all sanity. And I become all about that person and I lose myself. That type of person has codependent kind of tendencies. So what they're going to do is they're going to avoid relationships altogether. Let me know if this is resonating with you, if you can see yourself in any of these. I want you to call yourself out. This is how you end your ego, is you be willingness to be brave and call yourself out and go, yeah, that's me, number one, number two. Because now I have this unconscious pattern that's conscious, and I can now choose again and have that healthy relationship that's mutual and co-regulated. So the fifth one is you just don't have any boundaries. Now here's the whole thing with the feminine and your femininity. And I'm not a feminine coach, but I've observed women and I've been in relation with women. The more firmly set you are with your own individual boundaries and being able to say yes and no inside of you, the less masculine you need to be outside of you. Now, let me say that again. The more certain with who you are inside, with your boundaries of what's okay, of what, that's not okay that you show up this late and you don't let me know. That's not cool with me. And you're firm with your internal boundaries, the softer and more feminine you can be on the outside. Mm-hmm. If you don't have those boundaries on the inside, then you must put up this wall of toughness on the outside to protect yourself, mm-hmm. because you don't have any effing boundaries.
And I think with self-worth, like self-worth is kind of intertwined with that, because I know as my value and worth has increased and I'm very grounded in that truth now, my boundaries are a lot firmer, and certainly I feel and get a lot more compliments on my femininity now.
Totally. Because of the fact that we have worked on, and you have worked on getting you connected with the younger self that's been wounded, that caused you to behave in certain ways and call on relationships that are bringing up those wounds. And instead of projecting them onto him, you took the time to resource yourself. So now you have a firm sense of who you are. And when you get that right, you can then say, yes, I like that. No, I don't like that. This is what I prefer, and this is what I'm not okay with. You don't have to be mean about it, but you're just firm in it. It's just a grounding of who you are. And when you have that inner knowing, mm-hmm. all of a sudden, you can relax on the outside and surrender and lean
And
back and
trusting yourself as well, like to try different things and go, okay, well, actually that's a boundary I didn't know existed, or like,
yeah.
you know, like it's just having that trust to be able to just go with the flow. And yeah.
And the thing is, if you're first of all unconscious of those wounds, number one, and number two, unwilling to heal them, then you can't trust yourself. Of course you don't trust yourself in relationships. Of course you're going to show up needy. Of course you're going to say yes to everything and have no boundaries because of the fear of losing that person if I tell my truth. That's kind of one of the signs. That's really the hallmark of codependency is I'm going to hide my truth. I'm going to walk on eggshells. I'm going to put on a mask and be whatever I perceive to be and kind of fit my personality and my way of being into that person's life, because if I don't, then they're going to leave and then I can't love myself. So guess where all that comes from? Take a wild guess where all that comes from. That behavior. Yeah.
Sorry.
Take a wild guess where all that behavior comes from. This fearful of being yourself, not knowing who you are, wearing a mask, being whatever you need to in order to please. Where do you think that comes from?
From childhood.
Bingo. So one of the possible signs of codependency and something you want to look for is in your childhood, you have to really see what's in your history. In order to heal this, you cannot heal this unless you have a willingness to look at the history of the system with the family. So let me give you a classic example. In your history, if you have been in a situation where a mother or father was in a dark place, through addiction, they were divorced, they had a grief that they were going through, something that caused them to shut down or not have an ability to resource themselves or have a firm knowing of who they are or being able to see you, or it was just such a shit show, or within the family dynamic with the parents were such a shit show that you had to become the helper. You had to put on this great face and you had to show up and you had to please others so that you could get your identity and be the good girl or be the good boy. You have a history of helping others. In other words, you had to become an adult at a very young an age. Okay. Lucinda here says in the chat here, both my parents were like that and I had to step up. Exactly. If anything that was going through like that and it was such a shit show and they didn't do this work and they didn't have these programs available to then resource themselves, and you had to become an adult as a child and play that adult role. You had to fix, you had to be the fixer, you had to be the helper, you had to be the mediator. In other words, you had to abandon your own needs and put on a mask or a role in order to make sure that your primary caregivers were okay so that you could feel safe in your home. Welcome to the seedlings of codependency. Now, this isn't your fault. But if we don't take on the work of self-resourcing, reparenting that inner child, learning how to emotionally regulate the nervous system, all the stuff that I taught you that I've now kind of teaching online over the world and in these workshops that I do, if we don't take the time to make that a priority, what happens is we then unconsciously start to repeat those patterns. And if you can look and be honest and look in the mirror and go, holy shit, I'm acting like my mother and I swore I never would, or I'm exactly like my father and I swear I never would. It's not your fault. It's just that's what happened to them. As you're calling them monster and you're having resentment towards your parents, they were just kind of going through inherited family trauma passed down to them and now it's passed on to you. It was completely unconscious until this moment. Mm-hmm. Where you are now imbued with the responsibility.
Wake up call.
It's like, wake up. It's not your fault, number one. However, the work is not easy. However, if you don't take it on, you are unconsciously passing it along to the kids, which is why I think the people doing this work are heroes like yourself, because your little girls are going to make sure that
that's my driver. I look at them and I need to know that they have even more of an opportunity to live in their light. Like, that is my inspiration. But, you know, you just said it's not easy, Nima, but I think what's harder is living with your own bullshit. Like,
exactly.
you know,
I was going to say it's not easy, but the thing is that the alternative to doing this is
it's harder.
freaking unbearable.
Yeah, it is.
Right? And so what do you do? What do you do when you realize that? Is that, okay, these are, number one, these are family systems that are going on. I don't have any boundaries because I needed to be the good girl, the good boy. I need to have everyone's approval to like me in order for me to like myself. I don't like myself anywhere. I can't look at myself in the mirror. I walk on eggshells all the time. It feels good to constantly exhaust myself doing things for others. I'm a pleaser, constantly pleasing. Oh, I'm such a pleaser. I do things for other people. And you're telling that old victim story of I'm always a pleaser doing things. This is the wake-up call to realize that you wouldn't be doing it unless you were getting something out of the deal.
Yeah, do you know what feels better than being a people pleaser?
What?
Saying no.
Not for the codependent.
No, it just feels so good to be like, no, that doesn't serve me.
Not for the codependent, because the codependent cannot handle the guilt of saying no.
Right, but when you get to a place, because that used to be me, yes, run around doing things that didn't serve me and thinking, how did I get myself into this? And
because
now
you wanted the perceived approval.
Totally.
Here's what happens. I would start seeing patients come in with adrenal burnout, chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Those three things guaranteed are coming from a codependent. Guaranteed. I guarantee 18 years of being a car, as soon as I hear it, I have chronic fatigue, chronic insomnia, chronic pain. Guess what? We have a codependent. And if they just keep going on the outside with medications and the external stuff, nothing's going to help. The only answer is to go inside and do this, which is why I left my practice. And I'm teaching this because I want to liberate people from this. Is the answer basically is to take off that mask and ask the question, what am I getting out of this? Even though you're not going to like the answer, get uncomfortable. You want to ask that question. I want you to write that question down and answer 20 to 50 things of what your 20 to 30 responses of what are the benefits of me exhausting myself and saying yes all the time. What feelings am I trying to avoid, which is disapproval and rejection, which kind of like a little side note is you can't avoid that. It's there all the time. It's going to be there no matter what. So you're never going to win because you can't please other people constantly. That's a bottomless pit of giving until finally your health turns to crap. Okay. So what to do? Number one question you want to ask, what am I getting out of this? And the second thing you want to do is you want to up-level your self-worth, which is a whole work in itself. That's the work, right? It's not easy. You got to learn to regulate your nervous system. How do you elevate your self-worth? First of all, you have to say, I'm worth it, and I'm going to invest in time, resources in myself, which is your first hurdle. Most people are like, I'm not worthy of doing this. I feel bad. I don't want to take the time and the money away from the kids. My child needs so-and-so. I don't want it. So that's your first hurdle is basically saying, I want to increase my self-worth. So investing the time and resources in myself, regulating the nervous system, clearing your past resentment, learning how to dance with that inner critic, and learning how to empathically communicate with the younger self that's been wounded. That's the key. Learning how to do that. And then, of course, having a community of like-minded people who are working towards the same thing, who will not only just support you, abandon the support workers. You want to get support and you need to be challenged. In other words, you need a swift kick in the butt to experience discomfort. You got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because saying no the first time and sitting in that guilt is freaking difficult. But through practice and awareness, you're going to shift that. And then what comes on the other side? Health within your body, self-worth, as Kira is mentioning, and conscious relationships where you have mutuality, where you're helping them, yes, but then you're also receiving help because you're worthy of it. And you have a relationship when somebody honors you rather than treating you like shit because you're treating yourself like shit. And that's what's on the other side. That's what I want to share. And I travel all around the world doing workshops to teach people that over a weekend. And I have an online kind of trigger-proof workshop. I think you have
yeah, I'll put the link up of that one.
That one, make sure you're there. If you're joining us, make sure you show up, because I'm doing a Zoom call and we're going to get granular. And we actually had 2 people who had surgery, so they had to cancel their overview experience in Sydney. That's happening in, I believe, 3 weeks. 3 weeks time, we're going to be in Sydney, Australia, doing the overview experience, and we have 2 seats left, and you're going to be there.
I'll be there.
That's what we're doing. So that's where we learn to do that, to overcome this shitty relationship with yourself, so that you can literally change how people show up for you.
Love that. Amazing. And those steps that you just mapped out there on how to transform, we've actually covered a lot of that work in the previous calls, which people can find on my YouTube channel.
And I'm going to go through them specifically on my workshop. So I'd love for you to sign up, but make sure you show up. And I don't want you to come unless you're willing to be seen on the calls and have a discussion, because I want to help you to move forward and to entice you to be worthy of continuing this most important work of self-love. Because without that, your kids are screwed, your health is screwed, and all of your other relationships are screwed, because you don't have a good, healthy one with yourself.
It affects every area of your life. So I've posted that link, guys. Look, I get inboxed almost every day asking what is it that I did to work on myself to have the level of self-worth and success that I have today. And this is part of the work. So be willing to show up for you, because the other option is unbearable, as we said. And I promise you the work, it's not easy, but it's totally worth it. And the rewards are just beyond what you can even imagine. And
And if anybody who's listening, send me a DM sharing your specific story of suffering. And I want to show you how it fits within this exact paradigm, and invite you to be at our trigger-proof workshop this weekend online here. And then consider the possibility of grabbing one of our last 2 seats. If you just jump on it and say yes to yourself, I would love to see Kira's going to be there. I can't wait to squeeze Kira again and go look at you 1 year later in Sydney this time, looking gorgeous and killing it. But I'd love to meet you. I've been blessed to be able to work with so many of you Aussies, and it's just, I want to make Australia another home. That's my full disclosure. The more of you that I can work with, the more probability that I'm going to get to move to Australia. It's all completely selfish. I want to make Australia one of my homes.
Don't blame you. All right. Well, thank you so much. That went so fast, that 30 minutes.
I could keep going.
Thank you again for joining us here. Guys, if this resonated with you, please help us reach more people, and by sharing on your stories on Instagram, tagging Dr. Nima, myself, Kira's Wholesome Kitchen. We really, really appreciate your support and love. And thank you for all your beautiful messages that you guys send us from these calls too. Really, really grateful.
And thank you for the messages. I really appreciate it. And I really can't wait to meet you in person if I get the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Kira. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See you next month. See you in a few weeks.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.